need to hurt our immigrant communities and people like my own parents in order for us to protect undocumented youth or dreamers from deportation. And very importantly, she has been a fierce advocate against racist policies and a rhetoric that is being driven by the Trump administration. She's a defender of immigrant communities, a defender of our dreams. So please join me in welcoming Senator Harris.
So we are right now in a very important moment in time where the Department of Homeland Security created this arbitrary timeline. And they decided, somehow they concocted this idea that they were going to put in place these deadlines. And so on September 5th, they said by October 5th, 160 DACA recipients will have to pull together in 30 days documents. They'll have to figure out how to collect almost $500 to be able to be eligible to renew their status if their status would have expired before March. I've asked these folks in these committee hearings if they think this is fair, if they think this is right. I have asked them how it is that they could put in place this requirement without even directly notifying the intended recipients of this information. Because guess what, guys? So, you know, when I asked them, well, how did you inform the DACA recipients? How did you inform them that you're putting in place this deadline that is only going to give them 30 days to renew their status? They had to admit they've not notified these young people directly. You know how they notified them? In press conferences, in press releases. And this is supposed to be a fair system? They justify it by suggesting that they're standing on the side of right. I say it's wrong. When I asked the acting secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, what's going on with this? This can't seem right, that you also are unwilling to keep the commitment that America made to these young people, which is that if they give us the information about the circumstances of their arrival, if they give us information about their parents, if they give us information about where they are working and their background, and they clear the vet, we told them we would not share that information with ICE. And every single time I have asked these folks in committee hearings in the United States Congress, in the hallowed chambers of the United States Senate, are you willing to keep America's promise to these young people? Not one of them was willing to keep that promise. Not one of them was willing to say, we will stand by the word that we made when we said we will not share that information with ICE. Not one of them is willing to stand by what is right when it comes to who these young people are. And let's be clear, in spite of what they are trying to do in vilifying this population, this is a group of young people who are in our colleges, they are in our graduate schools, they're in medical schools and law schools. They are serving in our military. They are working in Fortune 100 companies. And we are unwilling to keep the promise and the word of the United States government. We stand here at this very moment where they only now have, until the end of today, really, those that need to renew their status, until the end of today to get their renewal papers in the mail. Because they have to be in Department of Homeland Security's offices by Thursday, October 5th. So part of what we're doing is saying, hey, everybody get your stuff in the mail by the end of today. Because we have asked, are they going to give any extension, in particular when we know that of the number of young people that we're talking about, 160,000 DACA recipients live in Florida and Texas. Those two states which just experienced some of the greatest devastation that nature can bring. Are you willing to give an extension to them? And they said no. So we're looking at a point in time right now, which by the end of today, we need to have these young people who want to renew and need to renew their DACA status to get that stuff in the mail. But you know, the thing that I find most troubling is when I asked the acting secretary of the Department of Homeland Security whether or not this was fair, whether or not this is right. You know what she said? This is compassionate. She said that what they're doing is compassionate. Well, let me tell you what's compassionate. What's compassionate is keeping your word. What's compassionate is sticking by a promise you made and following through and leading by example. What's compassionate is informing the dreamers directly, the DACA recipients directly, of the change in rules that you just created. That's compassionate. Instead of expecting that in the midst of them being in school and serving in our military and working every day, that they're going to be sitting at home watching a television and figuring out that on some press release, you changed the rules on them. Inform them directly. That's compassionate. It's compassionate to say they'll extend the deadline for the 160,000 DACA recipients who are in Florida and Texas. That's compassionate. It's compassionate to pass a Clean Dream Act. That's compassion. Yes. And it is compassionate to say that ultimately we will pass comprehensive immigration reform and allow the 11 million plus people that are living in our country, allow them a path towards citizenship. Because right now they're in a state of limbo. And this administration is creating policy that gives them no options. This is a policy and a perspective that is forcing people to live in the shadows. That is un-American. So let's be compassionate.
Thank you so much, Senator Harris, for your leadership. Again, I welcome everybody that just got here. My name is Cristina Jimenez, and I'm the Executive Director of United We Dream, the largest immigrant youth-led organization. And I'm thankful today and honored and proud to be with all of you here, fierce and powerful women, mothers, sisters, friends, and our brothers and sisters from the LGBTQ community. And as Senator Harris was saying, we are all standing here to demand a Clean Dream Act. This week marks 1 month since Trump killed the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. And in just 2 days, on October 5th, this administration will shut the door on thousands who could renew their status to protect themselves from deportation and have the ability to work for 2 more years. So in the last few weeks after this announcement, we've had 154,000 young people and families that have had to go on a desperate scramble to raise $495, find an attorney, find a legal service provider to submit your renewal on time. And as the reports have laid out today, we have over 40,000 young people that have yet to send their renewals for their DACA applications. This means that we have over 40,000 young people who are immediately at risk when their DACA status expires. The horrifying sentiment of not having uncertainty in your life is real in our communities. My own brother Jonathan, who's 23, has DACA. And DACA has allowed him to go to school, live without fear of being deported, drive without fear that he will be detained and put in a deportation camp, and also help my undocumented parents pay the bills. So I stand here today for my brother, my undocumented parents, and thousands of dreamers and undocumented young people and our families, because we stand together to say, this is our home and we're here to stay. Over the last couple of weeks, that's right. You know, it is really an act of resilience. I grew up undocumented, and I could have been deported in the last 20 years that I have been living here. And we are not. And I'm here to continue fighting for our communities. And over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of talk about deals, about compromises, about punishing the parents of undocumented youth, about border security, about more enforcement. Let's be really clear. All of these tweets and leaks of stories create confusion and more terror in our communities, and it's really playing with people's lives. It is our lives that are at stake. Think about it. Would you accept a deal, any of you here, would you accept a deal that will protect your brother or your sister or your sibling from deportation and will put more deportation agents on the ground to deport your mom and your dad? What was that?
No.
Would you agree to break up your family?
No.
That's right. And so that's why all of us here today are standing together to say that we are here demanding a clean DREAM Act. A clean DREAM Act that will not put people like my parents at deportation and that will not hurt and criminalize our communities any further. Because the fact that our community is worried and living in fear is justified. Sometimes I get reporters and people saying, why are people afraid? Just last week, there was a report of hundreds of people detained and arrested by ICE agents. People are being targeted in their churches. When they go to the supermarket, parents are being detained in front of their children when they're going to school. This is the America that we live in today. So that's why we need to ditch the idea that we need more enforcement and more suffering for the immigrant community in exchange to protect undocumented young people. And we are standing here to say, there's no way I would accept a policy that will break my family apart. There is no way that I would accept a policy that will say we will put more agents and more Border Patrol agents on the ground so that your family gets deported. So we stand here together, and I am really proud of how strong our movement has unified around our demand of a clean DREAM Act. And I am here on behalf of all of our members, thanking all of our allies, brothers and sisters here and outside of DC who have been standing with us, because we are here to stay regardless of what Trump says. We're not going anywhere, and dreamers and our communities will continue to fight until we win a clean DREAM Act. And so with that, I want to introduce you to our next champion and senator who has stand with us and for our communities, Senator Dorwan. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Tammy Duckworth and I am the junior senator from Illinois. Let me just make it clear. I stand with my colleague, Senator Dick Durbin, who is the author of the DREAM Act, in accepting nothing less but the Food DREAM Act in anything that we do as we move forward, and we need to do it now. Yes. I am a daughter of the American Revolution. My ancestors fought for the liberty of this nation, and when they did that, they never had in mind a nation that had different types of citizenship. And these deals that we hear about, these policies that perhaps might grant citizenship to dreamers, but with a contingency where they can't take care of their parents, that starts a slippery slope where you have different types of Americans, and that is not acceptable. I'm also a daughter of an immigrant. My mom became a citizen in her 50s. And let me just tell you that our nation is richer and more vibrant because of immigrants. If you have no compassion and you don't care about suffering and families being separated and young people not being able to pursue their future, then you should at least care about our nation's strength and our economy. I served for 23 years in the military, and our dreamers make the military stronger. The language skills that they bring, the cultural understanding, it's why the United States military can go anywhere in the world and have representation from that part of the world within our ranks. It's why I introduced legislation to provide citizenship for dreamers who choose to serve honorably in our military. But it can't just be about military service. Everyone deserves to have that chance. Bottom line, dreamers and immigrants are entrepreneurs, they are doctors, they are students, they are providing health care in parts of this country that suffer from shortages of healthcare workers. They're part of the fabric of who we are as a nation. And if we lose them and we send them back to a country that they have never known, they're still going to be resilient, amazing people. But what they will do is they will be that entrepreneur who starts a new business overseas that will compete with America, as opposed to being an entrepreneur that starts a business here in the U.S. that brings growth to our economy, that contributes to us. So if you even don't have an ounce of compassion in your heart, you should at least be supporting the dreamers and supporting comprehensive immigration reform for the strength of this nation. We lead the world, but we cannot do that if we turn our backs on the very people that will rejuvenate, renew, and allow us to grow and continue to prosper into the next century. And as I said before, I stand with the Dreamers. I stand for the full Dream Act, and we will fight every single day here as long as we can to make sure that we do that. And then after the Dreamers, we need to work on comprehensive immigration reform. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Gonzalez Rojas, and I am the Executive Director of the National Latina Institute for Reproductive Health. I am so pleased to stand here today with you all to demand that Congress pass a clean Dream Act and seek permanent legislative solutions that protect all of our immigrant hermanas y hermanos. We are here to send a message loud and clear. We are here to stay. We will not sit idly by as this administration criminalizes our community, detains our mothers, and deports our youth. The DACA program has provided relief from deportation and work authorization to about 800,000 undocumented youth. Repealing it is a cruel and hateful attack against immigrant lives. For undocumented LGBTQ youth, the elimination of DACA brings an elevated risk of poverty, unemployment, and discrimination. It is crystal clear that under Trump's white nationalist agenda, that racism, bigotry, sexism, classism, xenophobia, homophobia, misogyny, and discrimination have been further indoctrinated into the society. And we will not accept that. This is our country. Every human being, regardless of their immigration status, deserves the right to live without fear of being abused, of being detained, deported, or killed due to politics. Living in such a state of fear limits our community's ability to live full and healthy lives, including obtaining access to essential and critical health care. We call on Congress to pass a Clean Dream Act. We thank our champions who are here with us today. We need to create a path to citizenship for dreamers without using their parents and loved ones as bargaining chips. We also called for bold leadership that joins the unyielding efforts of our community in standing up to hate and violence of this administration. We seek permanent legislative solutions that will protect all immigrants under threat in this country. Let today serve as a warning that our community of women, immigrants, youth, workers, allies across the country are organizing and continue to build our collective power to resist the xenophobia that plagues this country and threatens our lives. We stand more united than ever. We are not going anywhere. We are here to say, somos poderosas. Thank you very much. I turn it over to Winnie at the Center for American Progress.
Thank you so much. Fantastic. Thank you to Senator Harris and to Senator Duckworth, to Senator Durbin for his unwavering leadership, to Senator Schumer for leading us all. I stand with all of you today because, like all of you, I am outraged. I am outraged by a heartless president who cares little about the most defenseless people in our country. A president who would rip away health care from children, from women, from new mothers, and from those with disabilities. A president who would let the people of Puerto Rico suffer in the dark without food, water, or access to vital health care services. And a president who believes that the greatness of America is defined by his desire to tear apart the lives of hardworking Americans. I stand before you, Winnie Stackelberg from the Center for American Progress, to say no more. There is nothing great about separating immigrant families, about rounding up people while they're sitting in their homes or taking their kids to school. There is nothing great about threatening entire cities because they're willing to stand up and defend their residents. And there is nothing great about punishing young people by banishing them from the only country that most of them have ever called home. These Americans have done nothing wrong. They are as American as any one of us. And for those of us who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender being sent to another country could put their very lives at risk. I stand before you as a proud lesbian mom, and it was not so long ago that the government refused to recognize my family as a family. The thought of being taken away from my wife and my kids is too hard to bear. And the thought of being forced to live in a country that doesn't respect my full rights as a woman is too hard to imagine. So I can't stand by and watch this administration attack so many innocent people. The Center for American Progress can't stand by and watch this administration attack so many innocent people. None of you can stand by and watch this administration attack so many innocent people. Our country needs a solution that will allow more Americans to more fully contribute to the country and community that they love. We need a solution that will respect and protect the lives of immigrants who are queer and transgender. We need a solution that will show all immigrants that their lives and their human rights matter. And we need a solution that will help immigrant families thrive together and allow parents to raise children in safety and with dignity. That solution is the DREAM Act, and we can't stop pushing until Congress passes this bill. And I know that I can count on each one of you to keep making your voices heard until the job is done. Thank you very much, and keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Maria Teresa Kumar, and I'm the president and CEO of Voto Latino. And what folks most don't understand is that while we may have undocumented friends and family, we also have voters amongst us. Voto Latino represents 1 million supporters, but there are 6.5 million American voters that live in mixed status families. And we will not sit idly by as the administration tries to make false choices among who we are as Americans. And let's be clear. We claim in this country that we want the right immigrant. But then we look at the DACA recipient who has passed a background check, who pays billions into our economy, who takes care of their community, who are culturally American, and we decide no? Let's look inside ourselves, because there is not one American who is not complicit in the labor of our families. Not one American who does not take advantage of the hard work and sweat of these immigrant communities, who pour into our communities, who make sure that they are raising our family, taking care of our parents, making sure that our houses are clean, but more importantly, our doctors, scientists, and contributors. Let's look into ourselves to make sure that we are not separating families, not because it's the wrong thing to do, but it's not because it's un-American to do so. This president today is trying to make a false claim and trying to define the future of who we are. But let's not forget that only 25 years ago, we didn't have these type of rules on the books. We've been fighting for DACA for 20 years. So Congress, we stand before you today and say that you have to have political will. Because the people behind us, we have will, we have sweat, and you better believe we have much more to lose than you can possibly imagine. So while the fight right now is in Congress, we will see you in your local districts and make sure that you are held accountable. As a mother, the idea that my child cannot achieve their American dream because a president rescinded a federal contract on them, rescinded their word, is reprehensible. When the president rescinded DACA, I went back to when I was a young girl, 12 years old, trying to navigate America, trying to figure out what I needed to do right. And I knew that morning there was a 12-year-old girl that had been waking up every single morning saying, if I do DACA, if I do everything right by the law, then I can help myself and my parents. It is cruel to play with their dreams. It's un-American. It is not who we are. And you better believe that the fight doesn't end here. So we want a clean DACA bill. We want to make sure that there's a pathway to citizenship, because creating two Americas, we've lived that history, and it's not a bright one. But making sure that we are engineering and leveraging the passions and commitments that dreamers have demonstrated, working outside of the political aisles, demonstrates their passion and deep commitment for who this country values and who we believe we deeply are. So with that, I want to thank you so much, Christina, for your leadership, making sure that we are continuing this fight. But you better believe the fight is not over, and you have allies. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Jacqueline Ayers, and I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for Planned Parenthood. Thank you all for being here, and I'm so proud to work for an organization that believes in healthcare as a fundamental right for all of us in the U.S. and around the world. At Planned Parenthood, immigrants, including DACA recipients and immigrant youth, are our activists, our supporters, educators, leaders in our communities, our staff, and our patients. And Planned Parenthood patients are going to Planned Parenthood health centers because Planned Parenthood is a place that's open to every faith, every country of origin, sexual orientation, and immigration status. The President's decision to end the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program leaves 800,000 dreamers and immigrant youth who grew up in the United States at risk for deportation. Without DACA, their fate and their ability to remain in this country is unknown. The termination of DACA, the relentless attacks against immigrants by this administration, are immoral and fueled by extreme ideology that is blind to the evidence that DACA recipients are working every day to strengthen families and strengthen our communities. President Trump's decision to rescind DACA has caused fear and irreparable harm to communities that already face discrimination and barriers. Taking away these DACA protections will place vulnerable women, such as survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence, at risk for further exploitation. No one should fear deportation when they seek help or have to think twice about seeking life-saving health care. We must protect and support people so they can seek services without fear or hesitation. Having access to reproductive health care enables women to control their destiny, participate in the workforce, build stable families. All people, regardless of where they come from, deserve access to high-quality, affordable health care and safe environment for their families to live healthy lives. One of our dedicated DACA leaders at Planned Parenthood said the implementation of DACA changed her life. Sylvia shared before DACA the pressure of hiding in plain sight, carrying the burden of an uncertain future as an undocumented person in this country, stood in the way of her ability to access health care, to further her education, and she shared that with DACA, she was able to get a license, minimum wage job, apply for college in the country that she has always called home. DACA gave her her voice, and now that is being threatened. Planned Parenthood calls on Democrats and Republicans alike in Congress to act now to immediately pass a Clean Dream Act to protect immigrant youth and their families. And at this time, I'm really pleased to invite one of our champions, Senator Mazie Hirono.
Thank you. Thank you for calling attention to the fact that we have 800,000 DACA participants who are facing literally deportation, even if some of you may have watched the Judiciary Committee hearing today where we focused on DACA. Did any of you watch that? Maybe you didn't. Well, you can get it on YouTube. And there are people from the Homeland Security that came to testify, and I asked them, are you saying that the DACA participants have no fear? They don't have to fear deportation even if they came forward and relied on the government's reassurances that their information would not be used for deportation purposes? And they said, yes. I said, wait, you're telling me that 800,000 people will not have to fear deportation? And he said, yes. I said, then why don't you put it out there to assuage the fears of 800,000 DACA participants, their family and friends? I said, why don't you do that? He said, well, we don't know. You know why, right? Because he also acknowledged that this policy can change like that. So when Denise Rodriguez, some of you may know her, she is a medical student, she is one of the leaders of the DACA recipients, testified also, and I asked her, are you concerned? Are you fearful of being deported come March 5th when the 6-month period is up and Congress has not taken any positive action? She said yes. And I said, even if you heard the so-called reassurances of the people who testified from Homeland Security? She said yes, because she acknowledged that they could change their minds. This is what we're up against. We're up against an administration, we're up against a president who says one thing and does another. So the battles continue, and we talk about access to health care, all of those issues that concern everybody. Well, you know what, that's visited many times over for DACA people and all of the 11 million or so undocumented people in our country who all need to have, in my view, a path to citizenship. So, you know, it's really important for us to continue to show up, continue to raise our voices, because this is an administration that does not listen enough to the voices of the people that they are harming every single day. And just now, we heard about the tax proposals that the Republicans in both the House and Senate want to impose. It's going to be $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid and almost $500 billion in cuts to Medicare, so they can pay for tax cuts for the richest 1% of the people in this country. So we have to fight injustice at every turn, and for us standing here today, it's for the 800,000 dreamers out there. Mahalo nui loa.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Samantha Davis. I'm the Field Engagement Manager at the YWCA, and it brings me great joy to be able to speak on behalf of our CEO, Alejandro Castillo, and the 215 local associations throughout the nation that are serving 2 million women and their families. Today, as we are faced with deep anti-immigrant sentiments and continued policing of people of color, we reaffirm our vision of peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. We stand in solidarity with undocumented immigrants and communities of color who are targeted by ICE, law enforcement, and other systems of authority. This administration has now rescinded DACA, promised to increase immigration enforcement, as well as escalate police authority with reduced oversight. These efforts will work to create a storm of racial profiling, raids, police violence, detention, and deportation, each having a long-lasting impact on immigrant families and our communities at large. Roughly 97% of recipients of DACA identify as people of color. I want to be clear, this is not about the Constitution, this is about xenophobia, this is about race. And as we know, many people of color in this country bear a disproportionately amount of burdens and end with negative outcomes by no fault of their own. This rescission of DACA and failure to pass the DREAM Act only exacerbate these inequities. It is our responsibility to protect and support these communities. It is our responsibility to ensure that conversations about immigrant rights are intersectional, identify the ways in which women and girls are harmed, and it is our responsibility to resist anti-Blackness. We know that immigrants, or those perceived as immigrants, are under threat of racial and religious profiling. According to the research conducted by the Black Alliance of Just Immigration, Black immigrants are 3 times more likely than all immigrants combined to be detained and deported. As one of the largest networks of domestic violence service providers in the U.S., we know that these proposed immigration changes have devastating effects on immigrant survivors of gender-based violence. Abusers often use immigration status as a tactic of abuse to intimidate and control victims. There is no clearer example of this danger than the recent arrest of Ms. Gonzalez from the courthouse in El Paso, immediately following her obtaining of a protection order against her abuser. We are also receiving word from all of our local YWCAs across the nation that immigrant women and families who we serve are refraining from participating in programs due to the fear of being detained or deported. If survivors of violence can't even be safe when seeking services or getting protection orders, where can they be safe? We call on advocates to lift up women of color, in particular Black women, in their conversations. We call on local jurisdictions to provide sanctuary for immigrant families and people of color. And today we stand with our partners and the leaders and Senate who we hear from today for Congress to act now to protect the more than 800,000 dreamers who have received DACA protection and some 200,000 little dreamers who have been waiting to turn 15 to meet the DACA age requirements. YWCA has long understood that not one of us can be free until all of us are free, and thus it is up to us all to ensure that dreamers, Black immigrants, women, LGBTQ immigrants, and families not only survive, but have access to the resources and opportunities they need to thrive. Thank you. I do not see his name.
And now we have the great pleasure to introduce a true champion who really needs no introduction, a champion of women, of families, of immigrants, the great senator from the state of Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar.
All right, well, very good. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for being here on this beautiful day. We still are very focused today, of course, on what happened in Las Vegas, continue to be so, but we also have important policy matters that we also must work on. And today we had a hearing on DACA in front of the Judiciary Committee with administration officials, and I repeatedly asked them, why this date of October 5th? Why do you pick that date? Why can't you look at what happened in Texas and Florida and Puerto Rico? And they made some noises that they might look at a case by case when it came to Puerto Rico. But I think it just showed what trouble this is ahead and what trouble this is for our country if this just continues as is. Of course, we need to pass the DREAM Act. Of course, we need to change our policies, and we ultimately need to pass comprehensive immigration reform. So I look at this from my state's perspective, and I'm always reminded of a guy named Joseph Medina. I was trying to explain this to people in our state, what the Dreamers were all about, and I'd post things on Facebook, and it didn't quite seem to be sinking in, and then I found this guy. He was at the time 99 years old, young age of 99. And he was a dreamer. Now, he didn't know that he was brought over when he was 5 years old and grew up in Sleepy Eye, Minnesota, but he found out when he signed up to serve in World War II. And back then, in his words, when you wanted to serve and you didn't have your citizenship, what you did is you'd go to Canada for one day and stay in a hotel and come back. And that's what the Army did. He didn't do that. The Army told him to do that. So he did that, he came in, and then he was eligible to serve. And he served under General MacArthur in the Pacific, and he served his country well, and he came back to Minnesota, met his wife, got married, had a kid, and that kid, who I've also met, served in Vietnam. That's their family. And I brought him out here at age 99 to stand next to the World War II memorial that he saw for the first and last time. And standing next to him were two dreamers, high school kids from suburban Minnesota who wanted to serve in the Air Force but couldn't. And they listened to his story and they loved that guy. And by the way, he's still around. He is now 103. But the story there is one of a dreamer, and it's about our country and what our country stands for. And here you have a group of over 800,000 kids. 97%, I reminded my colleagues of this at the judiciary hearing, 97% of them are either at work, at jobs, or in school, right? And they basically took the word of our government and signed up and gave their personal information, and now their future is in peril. We must stand up for these kids. I did an event with our Archbishop, the Catholic Church, who stood with me in front of one of our Catholic churches in Minnesota with a bunch of dreamer kids. And one of them had a shirt on that says, awesome never ends, right? That's how these kids think of themselves. They're awesome, and we need to be just as awesome as they are and stand up for them. So with that, I think my colleague is here from a state you may have heard of, the state of New York. Senator Gillibrand, a true leader, someone who has many, many DACA kids in New York. I know we have 6,000 in Minnesota. She has many more in New York. Thank you for being here, Kirsten Gillibrand.
Well, thank you all for being here. I want to thank Amy for her leadership and that beautiful story. I want to thank all of my colleagues who spoke out today, and I want to thank all of you for standing up and speaking out, for being here, being present, and to tell President Trump that we don't agree with what he's doing. We cannot let President Trump end the DACA program. Ending DACA is an affront to who we are as Americans. It's an affront to everything this nation stands for. It's an affront to the Statue of Liberty and everything she stands for. The President and the Justice Department are needlessly targeting 800,000 people and their families who know no other country as home other than America. And as we're here today, that includes many members of our LGBTQ community. Ending DACA doesn't make us safer. It doesn't make our economy stronger. In fact, it does the opposite. Ending DACA would do enormous damage to families, to our LGBT community, and to so many others. It's cruel and it's harmful. So Congress must lead where the President refuses to do so. We must pass the DREAM Act so that our dreamers no longer have to fear that they're going to be deported, and so that young people who are raised here can live here and finally have a path to citizenship. Our democracy only works when regular people stand up and demand action. So if you care deeply about this issue, I urge you to speak out. Post on social media, leave a comment for everyone to see, and post on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Write a letter to the editor of your local newspaper, and most importantly, contact your local elected representatives and make clear to them why passing the DREAM Act is so important to you, your family, our communities. This is a fight we cannot give up, and this is a time when we cannot give in. We have to keep raising our voices, keep pushing back, keep standing strong, not only for ourselves, but for all those we know and love. It is our time to be heard, and do not give up. Thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Monifa Bandele, and I'm with the 1 million members of Moms Rising. We're here today to not only talk about how cruel the rescinding of DACA is to families all across the country, but to also say that our members from coast to coast are here today and will be day after day to stand in the gap for families. We as mothers recognize myths when we hear them, and there's two we've been hearing a lot lately. One is that somehow having DACA creates insecurity in our communities. Well, we happen to know that ripping families apart creates insecurity. We know that threats to security have to do with not allowing people to have access to higher education and access to jobs. The other myth is that there's somehow that having DACA creates economic insecurity. And we happen to know that the same thing is true, that preventing people from higher education, ripping families apart, and pushing people into the shadows actually furthers economic insecurity, and that programs like DACA and hopefully eventually comprehensive immigration reform increases security, increases our economic viability as a nation, and we want Congress to act now and pass the DREAM Act. One of the things that we do at Moms Rising is to center and uplift the voices of people who are directly impacted by this issue. And so at this moment, I'd like to introduce a very special mother who's going to talk to you from the heart about what it is really like to be a mother of DACA. Please put your hands together and give a warm welcome for Ingrid.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ingrid, and I am a proud member of Moms Rising, Mamás con Poder, and the mother of 2 dreamers. My sons are in their 20s, and they have lived in this country for more than 15 years, practically all their lives. They have never been anything other than Americans. Thanks to DACA, they have been able to work, get driver's license, and go to the college without fear or being sent away from their home to a country they don't know. But now the president has decided to end DACA. I worry every hour of every day that they will lose those protections. We came to this country dreaming that they could find a better future, and now I am worried that their dream is over because the mothers were these first dreamers, and our big dream is the best future for our children. Like all mothers, my children are on the most important things in my life. I want to give them everything and to defend them with all my soul. Young people like my sons are the future of this country and the future of this world. We should do everything we can to protect them and to give them opportunities to work, to contribute to our economy, and to learn and grow here in the United States, the country they call home. I hope that Congress and the President will support the DREAM Act clean so that my sons and their fellow dreamers can live without fear, realize their potential, and continue to make our country stronger. We are fighting until our last breath. Mamás con poder no se rinden. Mamás con poder no se rinden. Arriba los dreamers. No se rinden. Que vivan los dreamers. Thank you.
Hi, I'm David Stacy from the Human Rights Campaign. On behalf of our millions of members and supporters, I'm really happy to be here to support passage of a Clean Dream Act. Although I have to be honest, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why any of us are here. When there's a policy that is supported by 80% of the American people, why can't the people over there just get it done? It's not that hard. If we put this on the floor in either chamber, it would pass overwhelmingly. Why is the House leadership, why is the Senate leadership not getting this done? The president says he's for it, let's get it done. We know that dreamers are at risk. We know that they're afraid. There's no reason to be in this situation at all. It's time to get this done. When I think of the 75,000 LGBTQ dreamers worried about whether they're going to be safe, whether they're going to have a job, whether they're going to be able to go to school, whether they're going to be deported to a country where their very lives might be in danger, I can't sleep at night. And there's no reason for this to happen. There's no reason for us not to wait. What is the Senate doing this week? The Senate has no bill on the floor this week except a few nominations. There's plenty of time to get this done. What is the House doing this week? Nothing. It's time to put this bill on the floor. We need a clean dream. We need it now, and we need to get it done. And there should be no more political excuses because there's no reason. Majorities in every single congressional district in this country, I have no doubt, support this bill. And we don't need all those votes. We just need a majority in both chambers, or 60 votes in the Senate. That's easy. So put it on the floor. Let's get a clean dream done. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Today, I stand here making a case for my humanity and the humanity of hundreds of thousands of beneficiaries of Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, also known as DACA. Today, I stand here because there is nowhere in the planet where walking as a transgender woman is safe. But at least here in the United States, it is relatively safer than the birthplace where I was born, Colombia. Prior to coming to the United States, I was a survivor of rape. I was physically abused, and I felt in danger, even at home, with an intolerant parent, my father. With DACA, I faced discrimination, trying to find a job in a society that disqualifies people from getting a job based on their perceived or actual gender identity, gender expression, or sexual orientation. But despite that, I was able to secure employment on my own merit. And I say this because DACA as a program is under attack by an administration that continues to use lies to demonize people like me from diverse ethnic and racial backgrounds. This is about racial discrimination. This is about fighting xenophobia. But this is also about fighting gender discrimination. Let me make this very clear. DACA does not give beneficiaries like myself access to safety nets or even guarantees a job. Regardless, with DACA, I became the first undocumented transgender woman to graduate from Georgetown University. With DACA, I also became the first transgender Latina DACA beneficiary to become a commissioner in the District of Columbia under Mayor Vince Gray. With DACA, I was able to start my own freelance company, sustain and secure shelters for over 200 people experiencing homelessness in DC with Casa Ruby, inaugurate 3 organizations that employ over 25 people, start my own transition. And I want to take a pause there because I'm more than a production unit. I'm more than an economic benefit. I'm a person. I'm a person that didn't have health care for most of the 15 years that I've been in this country. But it was until I secured employment on my own merit that I was able to access the life-saving, gender-affirming health care that I need to live authentically and unapologetically. But also with DACA, I've been able to provide for myself, for my deported mother and sister, because DACA is not amnesty. DACA did not keep my mother and sister from being cruelly detained for over 3 months and subsequently deported. I find it alarming that this presidency is willing to put transgender people at risk of detention and deportation, knowing that transgender people, we are 5 times more likely to experience sexual assault while in detention. And if deported to a world where over 80 countries criminalize people based on their gender, on their sexuality, we will be facing a death sentence. This is a humanitarian crisis that was man-made. And I say men and not women. And that's intentional. We need your leadership. We need the leadership of the people, the leadership of champions in Congress, to make sure that we're able to pass a clean DREAM Act. And I mean a clean DREAM Act because nobody deserves to live without their mother. I have not been able to hug my mother since her deportation. I don't think anyone deserves that. And a clean DREAM Act means not demonizing and using our families as bargaining chips to get something that should have been done years ago. So thank you for your attention. Sí se puede. Sin papeles, sin miedo. Sin papeles, sin miedo. No papers, no fear. No papers, no fear. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, and this concludes our press conference. They're available for interviews if you want to reach out to them. Thank you.